Welcome to part 2 of my overview of my favourite music. In part 1 we looked at my favourite artists, now it's time to start on the final list in my marathon. These are my all-time favourite songs. As with movies, there are tons and tons of songs that I love, but a few that stand out above all the others. There were originally 30, just like with my favourite movies, but I eventually decided to include the list of 15 runners-up that I had and expand it to a full 50. So these are the 50 songs that I consider truly special. This was originally just a straight-up list, not bothering to explain myself for reasons I've discussed already. But then one June, back when it was still a top 30 list, I decided to share my favourite songs on Facebook one day at a time, and when it came to writing captions to accompany the links to the YouTube videos, I realised there was actually more to say about them than I thought. So most of these passages are recycled from the ones I assigned to them on Facebook, except some of those ran over 100 words, so I've had to edit them down a bit. For the songs from the few artists that weren't listed in the previous video, I'll add an addendum going over some of my other favourites from the artist in question, which will stand separate from the usual 100-word limit. So let's not beat around the bush, here we go. Number 50. Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me. So we start with a song that I think most would agree is a staple of big band music, also earning it the distinction of being the oldest song to make the list. To be honest, I'm not a huge Bobby Darin fan. To me, he always sounded like Dean Martin light, but I've always loved this particular song. I first heard it sung by Robbie Williams in Finding Nemo, but I think this classic version is far superior. Look up Bobby Darin's life story, by the way. It's fascinating, not to mention tragic. I have listened to a best of compilation, but I'm not sure what some of my other Bobby Darin favourites would be. Maybe Mac the Knife and Clementine. Number 49. I love when rock bands are versatile, when they're just as adept at ballads as they are at blood-pumping, energetic numbers. In fact, I often favour the ballads, as you'll see with a couple of other rock bands later on, and this is no exception. R.E.M. wrote the song as a tribute to the Beach Boys. I can't attest to how effective an homage it is, but I do think it's a sublime love song, even if the love described in the lyrics is a bit one-sided, more of a crush. Some of my other R.E.M. favourites would include The Great Beyond, Bad Day, and It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. Yeah, sorry, it's just impossible to put those words together without singing them. Number 48. Whitney Houston certainly had her fair share of power ballads, and this is my personal favourite. I think it's the ultimate display of the sheer raw power of her voice. I mean, she was born to sing like this. The strength and energy in her voice here is positively electrifying, which complements the uplifting message about believing in yourself. Speaking of which, when researching this list, I found out it was the anthem for the 1988 Summer Olympics. And you know what? That doesn't surprise me. I'm not sure what some of my other Whitney Houston favourites would be, aside from I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me. Number 47. This is one of very few songs that truly gets me in the mood for dancing. I have no idea how to describe it other than that, but I'm not sure I need to. The first time I heard it was in Happy Feet, but listening to it on its own, it transcended the movie pretty effortlessly. There's also a great scene in The Intouchable, or Untouchable as it's known in my country, where Driss plays it to liven up a party. It really is that kind of song, the kind that can quickly cheer up a whole room. I'm not sure what some of my other Earth, Wind & Fire favourites would be, aside from September. Number 46. I love the whole groove of this song that's immediately established by the opening riff and how it skillfully escalates in the chorus, as it should. It's hard to explain other than that, so I'll just share a fun bit of trivia with you. This song was only released as a single, never on an album. What's interesting is that it only hit number 2 in the UK charts, and before this the band had 4 singles in a row that hit number 1, so this song broke their streak. I'm not sure why, but it's still my favourite T-Rex track regardless. Number 45. When it comes to rock and roll, I'd be hard-pressed to name a better example than AC/DC. I'd say this is my favourite song of theirs just because it's the first one I ever heard, the song that got me into them. Funnily enough, it was also their first single from Back in Black, the first album they released after the tragic death of their original singer, Bon Scott, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as Back in Black became the second best-selling album of all time, behind only Thriller. That still blows my mind. Number 44. There was a time when I'd named this my all-time favourite song, but not anymore. There are a couple of songs on this list that I later found out were written for movies, but this is the only one that I fully associate with one. A lot of people mistakenly think it's from Rocky, but it actually didn't show up until Rocky 3. In any case, it's become a signature of the series because it embodies the triumphant feeling of overcoming impossible odds that's the Rocky movie's running theme. It's such an awesome song that it would make anyone feel invincible. Some of my other Survivor favourites would include Burning Heart and Man Against the World. Number 43. This was the song that got me into Ellie Goulding and convinced me to buy the reissues of her first 2 albums. What I love so much about it is the atmosphere its instrumentation creates. It's very hard to describe, but it's almost ethereal, like something out of this world, and the video enhances that all the more. I generally don't care much for music videos because they don't match what I think of when hearing the song, but this is one of few that I can't fault. The song and video complement each other to a T. Number 42. Sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. This might be Otis Redding's most famous song. It's certainly his only #1 hit, and it's easy to see why. I love how laid-back, melancholy, yet perky the song is. It perfectly captures the mood of a poor man sitting on a dock humming to himself. The whistle outro also seamlessly ties into that, even though apparently its existence is a happy accident, or maybe not so happy considering the circumstances. Otis Redding unfortunately died in a plane crash before he could finish recording the song, so it was released posthumously. I have no other Otis Redding favourites off the top of my head. I did listen to a best of compilation, but hardly liked any songs on it, so I just individually ripped the couple that I did. Number 41. I'm usually not a fan of disco or dance music, but this is one major exception. Like Boogie Wonderland, it brilliantly does its job of getting me in the mood for dancing, which is quite appropriate given that the chorus carries a message of hope and longing for a young, carefree attitude. At first I thought it was merely about marital frustration, but apparently it's an autobiographical song about an abusive marriage. Despite such a grim context, it still has an invigorating effect on me that's not really worth elaborating on. This is a song that I downloaded individually, so I have no other favourites from this artist. Number 40. I'm not quite sure why this is my favourite Beatles song, but for some reason it really stands out above all the rest. It may or may not be one of the first tracks that comes to mind when you think of Beatles classics, but apparently I'm not alone. John Lennon himself said it was probably the best, most poetic song he'd ever written. There are several different mixes of it, but easily my favourite is the version on Let It Be. By the way, is it just me, or do this song and Pink Floyd's Echoes have the exact same melody in their verses? Number 39. Much like Lights, I love this song almost entirely for the mood it creates. If I were to sum it up in one word, it would be serene. Maybe it's just because I first saw it on a talent show where it was performed this way, but it brings to mind a stage bathed in dark, almost soothing light of blue and black. When the instrumental identity is that strong, the actual meaning is almost secondary in my view, although the chorus's theme of devotion and encouragement is a very poignant cherry on top. Some of my other Cyndi Lauper favourites would include True Colours and of course Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Number 38. When you see me fly away without you. It's ironic that this is my favourite Neil Young song because in many ways it's the polar opposite of everything that typifies him. I mainly associate him with acoustic guitar-driven country rock. In fact, his songs are usually my first choice whenever I pick up a guitar, but this is a ballad where the only instrument is a piano. But that just goes to show how achingly beautiful the song is. It trumps everything I'd be inspired to play. I'm not sure what it's about. The birds are obviously a metaphor for something, but whatever it is, it must be quite bittersweet. Number 37. Yep, anyone who knows me knows it was inevitable that Keane would end up on the list, and this is the quintessential Keane song, the most often requested on radio stations, and the one that the crowd always sings the loudest and most passionately at every concert. Understandable, since not only is it incredibly easy to sing along with, but as lead singer Tom Chaplin put it, it's a song about love and friendship and all the things you love and cherish. Honestly, I could have filled this entire list with Keane songs, but that would have been too easy. Number 36. This has to be my favourite Take That song. Now, in many ways, it's just another cookie-cutter pop song, and the subject matter is nothing to write home about, but I can't help it. I'm just a sucker for a good acoustic track and vocal combination. There have been songs like Outkast's Miss Jackson and Adele's Someone Like You that encompass all the emotions that a breakup entails, but this one focuses on just one, regret, and Gary really sells it too. Some of my other Take That favourites would include Shine, A Million Love Songs, and Butterfly, the hidden track on the Beautiful World album. Number 35. It's kind of fitting that the only rap song on my list is often considered the greatest rap song of all time. Like many rap tracks, it's all based on a sample, in this case Stevie Wonder's Pastime Paradise. It might also be the most pessimistic song on this entire list. Maybe I'm generalizing, but a lot of rap songs seem to be about the hardships of life, and this is no exception. It's a reflective song about how the subject's whole life has gone to shit and he can never go back. I just downloaded a couple of Coolio songs individually, so I have no other favourites aside from See You When You Get There. Number 34. The title says it all. I just adore the sentiment that love in a romantic sense is fickle, but friendship will never die. Even when love lets you down, your friends will always be there for you. And of course, in Queen's hands, especially with Freddie Mercury's legendary vocals at the lead, the song turns into a rousing, soaring tribute to friendship. For that easily understandable message and powerfully spirited delivery, this immediately became one of my favourite Queen songs the moment I first heard it. Number 33. This is one of the songs I mentioned earlier that I didn't know was written for a movie until I was researching this list, and I never would have guessed it was Footloose. I'm not overly familiar with that movie, so I never would have associated this song with it. The first time I heard it was when it was covered in Shrek 2's Grand Climax, and it feels considerably more appropriate there. But much like Boogie Wonderland, once I heard the original, it became the only true version in my eyes. I mean, Bonnie Tyler's voice is unbelievable. I just downloaded a couple of Bonnie Tyler songs individually, so I have no other favourites aside from maybe Total Eclipse of the Heart. Number 32. Simply put, this is a song that never fails to put me in a good mood. The band themselves have compared it to the Beatles' Hey Jude, and yeah, they are very similar in that the bulk of the song is uplifting enough, but the extended outro is what everyone remembers. The outro consists of a single phrase that only inspires more cheer the more it's repeated, especially if it's a big crowd all singing together. That phrase applies to the song itself too. No matter how many bad days I have, just one song like this makes it all worthwhile. I have listened to the Seldom Seen Kid album, but I'm not sure what some of my other Elbow favourites would be, aside from maybe The Bones of You. Number 31. You can't hide your eyes. Some songs just straight up tell a story through their music, and this is one stellar example. I'm not an expert on chord progressions or anything, but this one makes the song sound as natural as talking while still being a pleasant melody. The story itself is easily distinguishable and compelling too. It's about infidelity, and I love how it conveys the subject's thought process. She knows what she's doing is selfish, but the other guy makes her feel as good as she used to. Ultimately though, her life is still empty and she wonders where it all went wrong. Some of my other Eagles favourites would include The Long Run, Desperado, and Hole in the World. Number 30. The best word I can use to describe this song is stirring. It's a shining example of Elvis's power on stage, how he could just as easily energize a crowd with a glorious ballad as with a lively piece like, say, Jailhouse Rock. The song was only ever recorded live, never in studio, but I think that just enhances its spirit. I do have to wonder what a studio version would have sounded like though. But regardless, it's one of Elvis's biggest hits and my personal favorite. Number 29. To me, this and Billie Jean are the definitive Michael Jackson songs. If you want a straight up pop anthem you can dance to, you go to Billie Jean. But I'd say Beat It has the edge because it's basically the same thing but blended with rock and roll, complete with an Eddie Van Halen guitar solo. Its rock elements make it unique among Michael's body of work, and I'd say it's a prime example of how rock music can still be danced to. Number 28. She's a natural disaster, she's a recipe American girls. I'm not sure how popular this track is with other fans, so it might seem strange that I'd pick this as my favorite Green Day song, but it's true. It's so catchy that I'm not surprised it was released as a single. Its strong, steady beat never fails to get me grooving. It's the kind of song that I could play on repeat because while listening to it, I truly don't want it to end, and that might be the highest praise I could possibly give. Number 27. Hands down my favorite Proclaimers song. I can't exactly explain why, it's just one of their catchiest beats and yet still a beautiful sounding song, complete with a great subject matter. Like Lyin Eyes, it has the kind of structure that lends itself well to telling a story, and it's a story you can very easily follow. Even though it's on the Best Of compilation, I'm not sure how many other people would consider it when talking about the best Proclaimers songs, so I suppose I might also call it their most underrated song. Some of my other Proclaimers favorites would include Letter from America, There's a Touch, and of course, I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles. Number 26. It's understood that Hollywood sells Californication. This is one of those songs where every time I hear it, I realize I'd forgotten just how much I love it. Like with all the other songs on this list though, that's mainly due to the sound of the music. For a long time, the lyrics made absolutely no sense to me, but now I know it's mainly about the dark side of Hollywood and the exploitation of culture. It's kind of ironic then how upbeat and almost pleasant the song sounds. I also really love the video, by the way. And that's it for now. Check in tomorrow for part 3 where we'll conclude this list, and with it the whole series.